Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration ship UES Vanguard and looked at the sensor readings with growing excitement. For 3 long months, his crew had been following weak energy signals through the dangerous Kepler Nebula, where most ships never dared to go. The nebula was filled with cosmic dust and radiation that could destroy a ship in minutes, but Jake knew they were close to finding something important. Lieutenant Amy Collins looked up from her control station with wide eyes and called out to her, "Commander!" Her voice shook with disbelief as she spoke. "Captain, you really need to see this right now. Something huge is out there and it does not match anything in our computer files." Jake walked quickly to her station and studied the readings. On her screen, the massive shape that was slowly coming out of the cosmic dust was clearly made by humans, but it looked nothing like any ship in their current fleet. The vessel was almost 2 kilometers long and covered with weapon systems that seemed far more advanced than anything Earth could build today. The ship hung motionless in space like a sleeping giant waiting to wake up. "Run those hull markings through our database right away," Jake ordered his crew, even though he already had a strong feeling about what they would discover. Something about the ship design looked familiar from old history books he had read. As a young officer, Chief Science Officer Ryan Blake worked at his computer for several minutes before looking up with a pale face. "Sir, the ship registry matches the UES Defiant. Our records show that she was lost during humanity's first attempt to expand beyond our solar system more than 60 years ago during the war with the aliens." Jake felt cold fear run through his body. The Defiant had disappeared during the darkest time in human history, when the alien hegemony had pushed human forces back to just a few inner colonies near Earth. Everyone on board the Defiant had been thought dead, including the famous Admiral. Kate Hamilton, who was known as humanity's greatest military leader and tactical genius. But here, the ship was floating in space, looking perfect and somehow much more advanced than anything Earth could currently build. Jake had studied Admiral Hamilton in military school and knew that losing her and the Defiant had been one of the worst defeats in human history. The loss had come at a time when humanity desperately needed every ship and every experienced commander. To fight against the alien invasion, Amy Collins ran more detailed scans and reported her findings. "Commander, the ship appears to be in perfect working condition. All major systems are showing as operational, and there are signs of recent activity. The power core is running at low levels, but it definitely active. There are also some kind of energy readings that our computers cannot identify." Jake made his decision quickly. "Prepare a boarding party. I want our best people over there to investigate, but everyone goes in full combat gear and stays in constant contact. We have no idea what we might find on that ship or if there are any survivors after all these years." Dr. Lisa Park, the ship medical officer, gathered her equipment and prepared to join the boarding team. "Commander, if there are any survivors on that ship, they might need immediate medical attention. 60 years in space without proper support systems could have serious effects on human health." The boarding shuttle launched from the Vanguard and slowly approached the massive hull of the Defiant. As they got closer, the boarding team could see details of the ship construction that amazed them. The hull was covered with armor plating and weapon systems that were clearly not standard human technology. Strange symbols and markings covered parts of the hull alongside the familiar Earth military identification numbers. Lieutenant Bobby Chen, who was leading the boarding team, reported back through his communication device. "The ship is responding to our approach signals. Docking bay doors are opening automatically, like the ship knows we are coming. This is definitely not normal for a ship that has been lost in space for 60 years, as their shuttle entered the Defiant docking bay emergency. Lighting began to turn on throughout the ship. The boarding team stepped out onto the deck and found themselves in a docking bay that looked both familiar and completely foreign. The basic layout was recognizably human, but the technology and equipment they could see was far beyond anything currently used by Earth forces. The air in the ship was breathable and all systems seemed to be working perfectly. Bobby Chen led his team through corridors that were lit by soft blue lighting that seemed to follow their movement through the ship. Everything they saw suggested that this was not just an old lost ship, but something that had been upgraded and improved far beyond its original capabilities. The team made their way toward the ship's central command center following emergency lighting that guided them through the corridors. Along the way, they passed rooms filled with equipment and technology that none of them recognized. Some of the devices seemed to be working, even though the ship had been supposedly lost for decades. When they finally reached the command center, the boarding team stopped in amazement. The room was filled with holographic displays showing charts and tactical information that covered areas of space that human explorers had never reached. In the center of the room was a strange crystalline chamber that seemed to glow with its own internal light. Inside the chamber, they could see the outline of a human figure preserved in some kind of stasis field. Dr. Lisa Park ran her medical scanners over the chamber and reported her findings with growing excitement. The person inside is definitely alive and in perfect health. This preservation technology is beyond anything we have ever seen, but it appears to be keeping them in perfect suspended animation. Jake Morrison looked at the figure in the chamber and felt his heart racing. Even through the distortion of the stasis field, he could recognize the face of Admiral Kate Hamilton. The greatest military mind in human history was still alive and waiting to be awakened after 60 years of mysterious absence. The question that filled everyone's mind was simple, but terrifying. Where had the Defiant been for 60 years, and what had happened to transform it into this advanced vessel? More importantly, what would Admiral Hamilton tell them about where she had been and what she had learned during her long absence from human space? Jake gave the order to begin the process of safely awakening Admiral Hamilton, while his crew continued to explore and document the incredible technology they had found on the lost ship. Dr. Lisa Park worked carefully with the alien preservation technology, while the rest of the boarding team watched with nervous excitement. The crystalline chamber that held Admiral Kate Hamilton was unlike anything in human medical science, but the controls seemed to respond to human touch. Strange symbols on the chamber surface began to glow brighter as Lisa carefully adjusted the settings according to readings from her medical scanner. Commander Jake Morrison stood nearby, ready to speak with the legendary admiral as soon as she woke up. He had studied her military campaigns in school and knew that Admiral Hamilton had been responsible for some of humanity's greatest victories against impossible odds. Her tactical genius had saved human colonies from destruction multiple times before the Defiant disappeared during the war with the hegemony. The stasis field began to fade slowly, and the admiral body started to show signs of returning life. Her breathing became deeper, and her closed eyes began to move behind her eyelids. Dr. Park watched her medical readings carefully and reported that all vital signs were returning to normal levels. Whatever technology had preserved the Admiral for 60 years had done its job perfectly. When Admiral Hamilton's eyes finally opened, she looked around slowly at the unfamiliar faces surrounding her chamber. Her gaze was sharp and intelligent as she took in every detail of the people and equipment around her. She tried to speak, but her voice was weak after so many years of silence, so Dr. Park quickly gave her water to drink. "How long?" the Admiral asked in a voice that carried the weight of someone who had seen terrible things and made impossible decisions. Her simple question held so much meaning that everyone in the room understood she was asking about much more than just time. 62 years, Admiral Morrison replied with respect in his voice. Earth fell to the hegemony 15 years ago, and humanity is now scattered across refugee colonies in distant star systems. Most of our home worlds are under alien control, and our military forces are a tiny fraction of what they were when you disappeared. Admiral Hamilton closed her eyes for a long moment as she processed this devastating news. When she opened them, again they burned with determination and anger that showed she was far from defeated by what she had learned. "Then at time I told you where I have been and what I learned during my long absence from human space," she said. The Admiral slowly stood up from the chamber with Dr. Park's help and looked around the command center that had changed so much since she last saw it. The holographic displays and advanced technology were clearly not standard human equipment from 60 years ago. She walked to one of the control panels and activated systems with practiced ease. The Defiant did not simply disappear. Admiral Hamilton began as star charts and alien ship designs appeared on the displays around them. We were pulled through a spatial tear in space-time into what the local inhabitants call the distant reach. This is a region of space far from our galaxy, where we found ourselves in the middle of an ancient War Lieutenant Amy Collins who had joined. The boarding team listened carefully as the Admiral continued her explanation. What kind of war, she asked, while studying the alien symbols and ship designs on the holographic displays. A war against the same enemy that now controls Earth. Admiral Hamilton replied grimly. The hegemony is not just attacking humanity because we are weak or because they want our resources. They are part of an ancient empire that has been consuming younger civilizations for thousands of years across multiple galaxies. We were simply their latest target in a campaign of conquest that has continued for longer than human civilization has existed. The Admiral activated a three-dimensional map that showed vast areas of space marked in red to represent hegemony-controlled territory. But in the distant reach, we found something the hegemony never expected any of their victims to discover. We found allies who had been fighting them for generations and waiting for someone with humanity-particular talents to help tip the balance of the war. Dr. Park studied the displayed information about alien medical technology and asked what talents the Admiral was referring to. What could humans offer to advanced alien civilizations that they did not already possess after fighting the hegemony for so long? Admiral Hamilton smiled for the first time since waking up, and her expression showed both pride and determination. Adaptability and innovation and the willingness to take risks that more advanced species would never consider. While our new allies fought the hegemony using tactics and technologies that had remained basically unchanged for centuries, we brought chaos and unpredictability to their carefully planned conquest. Chief Science Officer Ryan Blake examined the technical information displayed on the screens around them. Admiral, is that how this ship became so much more advanced than when it originally left Earth? The technology we are seeing here is decades or possibly centuries ahead of our current capabilities. We spent 40 years fighting alongside something called the Coalition of Free Worlds, Admiral Hamilton explained as she showed them images of dozens of different alien species working together. They shared their most advanced technology with us, and we shared our tactical knowledge and human way of thinking with them. This ship is the result of combining the galaxy's most advanced civilizations with humanity. Most dangerous innovation. The displays showed weapons and defensive systems that seemed to bend the laws of physics, along with star charts covering regions of space that human explorers had never imagined existed. The Admiral explained that the Defiant had become a testing ground for new ideas that combined alien science with human creativity in ways that surprised even their allies. "But why did you come back?" Commander Morrison asked. "With technology like this, you could have helped win the war in the distant reach and built a new life for humanity far from hegemony-controlled space." Admiral Hamilton's expression became serious as she looked at the data showing Earth's current situation under alien occupation. Because the Coalition discovered something that changed everything. The hegemony is not just expanding randomly across the galaxy. They are searching for something specific, and Earth location makes it a key target in their search. She activated another display that showed energy readings and astronomical data that meant nothing to the human observers. There is something buried deep in Earth history that the hegemony needs for their final campaign. If they find it, they will become unstoppable across multiple galaxies. We came back not just to save humanity, but to prevent the hegemony from achieving their ultimate goal. The boarding team looked at each other with growing understanding of how important their discovery had become. Finding the Defiant was not just about recovering a lost ship and a famous admiral. It was about preventing an ancient evil from becoming powerful enough to destroy civilizations across the entire universe. Admiral Hamilton turned to face Commander Morrison directly and spoke with the authority of someone who had spent decades fighting impossible battles. "Commander, I need you to take me to whoever is currently in charge of human resistance forces. We have allies coming and plans to make." The real war is about to begin. Admiral Kate Hamilton led Commander Morrison and his senior officers through the corridors of the Defiant toward a secure briefing room that had been added during the ship's 40-year absence. The walls were covered with displays showing maps and tactical information that covered regions of space far beyond anything humans had ever explored. Strange alien symbols mixed with human text created a visual record of decades spent fighting alongside non-human allies. The briefing room itself was larger than the original ship plans had shown and filled with technology that seemed to respond to the Admiral thoughts rather than requiring manual operation. As they sat down around a table made from some kind of translucent crystal, the room displays automatically activated to show the story Admiral Hamilton was about to tell. We did not just disappear into empty space. She began as three-dimensional. Images appeared above the table, showing the moment when the Defiant was pulled through a spatial anomaly. The tear in space-time that caught us was artificial, created by a desperate alliance of alien species who were making their last stand against hegemony forces. In the distant reach, Lieutenant Bobby Chen leaned forward to study the images of alien ships and battles that looked unlike anything from human military history. Why were they so desperate, Admiral, and what made them think that capturing a human ship would help them win their war? Because they had been monitoring radio signals from Earth for decades and studying human behavior through our television broadcasts and military communications, Admiral Hamilton replied with a slight smile. They realized that humans approach problems differently than most intelligent species in the galaxy. While they had been fighting the hegemony using logical tactics and established military doctrine, we were completely unpredictable. Dr. Lisa Park studied the medical information being displayed about various alien species and asked how different these allies really were from humans. The biological data showed creatures that ranged from silicon-based life forms to energy beings that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Very different in biology, but surprisingly similar in their desire for freedom and their willingness to fight for it, the Admiral explained. The coalition of free worlds included over 60 different species who had all lost their home worlds to hegemony expansion over the past 1,000 years. They had been refugees and resistance fighters for longer than human civilization had existed. Chief Science Officer Ryan Blake examined the technical specifications for alien technology that were being displayed around them. Admiral, the power, sources, and weapons systems shown here seemed to violate several laws of physics that we thought were absolute. How were you able to integrate human engineering with these advanced technologies? That was exactly what made the partnership so successful. Admiral Hamilton replied as she showed them footage of human engineers working alongside alien scientists. Our allies had amazing technology, but they had been using it the same way for centuries without significant innovation. Humans brought fresh perspectives and willingness to experiment that led to breakthrough discoveries. The displays showed the evolution of the Defiant over 40 years as human and alien technology merged in ways that surprised everyone involved. Weapon systems that had been designed for defense were modified for rapid assault tactics. Communication equipment was enhanced to coordinate attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously. Even basic life support systems were improved using alien knowledge combined with human problem-solving skills. But the most important discovery was not technological, Amy Collins observed as she studied battle footage showing combined human and alien fleets fighting hegemony forces. It was tactical, exactly. Admiral Hamilton confirmed with approval. Humans fight differently than any species the hegemony had encountered before. We use improvisation, deception, and calculated risks that logical military minds would never consider. While alien forces fought predictable battles, humans brought chaos to carefully planned campaigns. The room displays showed major battles where small human-led forces had defeated much larger hegemony fleets through tactics that made no sense according to traditional military theory. Ships that should have retreated instead charged directly into enemy formations. Fleets that appeared to be fleeing suddenly turned and attacked from unexpected directions. Human commanders made decisions that seemed completely insane until they Worked perfectly. Dr. Park studied casualty reports that showed surprisingly low losses, despite the aggressive tactics being used. Admiral, how did you manage to win these battles without losing massive numbers of ships and personnel? Because we learned to combine human unpredictability with alien defensive technology, Admiral Hamilton explained. Our allies provided shields and armor that could protect ships during the most dangerous maneuvers, while human tactics provided the element of surprise that made those maneuvers successful. The partnership had created something entirely new in galactic warfare. Human creativity merged with alien science produced strategies and technologies that neither species could have developed alone. More importantly, it had given the coalition its first real victories against the hegemony in centuries of warfare. But after 40 years of fighting, why did you decide to return to Earth? Commander Morrison asked. With all these advanced technologies and alien allies, you could have established a new human civilization far from hegemony-controlled space. Admiral Hamilton's expression became grave as she activated displays showing energy readings and astronomical data focused on Earth's solar system. Because we discovered why the hegemony invaded Earth specifically rather than simply bypassing it for easier targets. They are not just conquering human territory for resources or strategic advantage. The displays showed complex calculations and ancient records provided by coalition historians who had studied hegemony expansion patterns for centuries. Earth location and history make it important to something the hegemony calls the final convergence. There is an artifact buried somewhere in our solar system that they need to complete their ultimate plan. Ryan Blake studied the energy signatures and radiation patterns being shown. What kind of artifact could be so important that an interstellar empire would focus their expansion efforts around finding it, something left behind by an even older civilization? Admiral Hamilton replied grimly. The coalition historians believe it is a key component for a weapon system that could destroy entire galaxies rather than just individual worlds. If the hegemony finds this artifact, they will become unstoppable across the entire universe. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications of this revelation. Finding the Defiant had not been just a lucky discovery of a lost ship and crew. It was potentially the key to preventing the destruction of countless civilizations across multiple galaxies. Admiral Hamilton stood up and looked directly at each officer in the room. That is why we came back and why we brought coalition allies with us. We are not here just to save humanity or even to liberate Earth. We are here to prevent the hegemony from achieving their final goal and becoming masters of the universe itself, Commander. Morrison realized that their simple exploration mission had suddenly become the most important military operation in galactic history. Admiral Hamilton led Commander Morrison and his officers through sections of the Defiant that had been completely rebuilt during the ship's 40-year absence from human space. Each new area they visited revealed technology that seemed impossible. According to everything humans understood about physics and engineering, the fusion of human innovation with alien science had created something entirely beyond either species' individual capabilities. The quantum drive engine room was their first stop, and Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez stared in amazement at machinery that seemed to bend space around itself. Admiral, how does this propulsion system actually work? The energy readings suggest it manipulates fundamental forces that we barely understand. Think of space as a fabric that can be folded. Admiral Hamilton explained while activating displays that showed the drive theoretical principles. Rather than pushing through space like traditional engines, the quantum drive folds space so that distant locations become adjacent. We can travel anywhere in the galaxy in days rather than years. Dr. Lisa Park examined the medical bay where alien healing technology had been integrated with human surgical techniques. The regeneration chambers could heal injuries that would be fatal using conventional medicine, while diagnostic equipment could identify diseases at the molecular level before symptoms appeared. Alien biological knowledge combined with human medical innovation had created healing capabilities that seemed miraculous. But the most impressive discovery was the defensive systems that protected the ship from weapons that could destroy entire planets. Lieutenant Amy Collins studied shield generators that created protective fields strong enough to withstand direct hits from hegemony dreadnought main cannons. The energy requirements alone should have been impossible for any ship to generate. The shields draw power from multiple dimensions. Simultaneously, Admiral Hamilton explained as she showed them energy flow diagrams that hurt to look at directly. Our coalition allies discovered how to tap into parallel universes for unlimited power, while human engineers figured out how to channel that power through systems designed for much lower energy levels. Lieutenant Bobby Chen examined the weapons, systems with growing excitement and concern. The main cannons could fire projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions, simultaneously making them impossible to dodge or block using conventional defenses. Secondary weapons included energy beams that could disrupt molecular bonds and missile systems that could track targets across interstellar distances. These weapons could destroy entire hegemony fleets, Chen observed while studying targeting systems that seemed to predict enemy movements before they happened. Admiral, with this kind of firepower, we could liberate human colonies and strike back at hegemony occupation forces. We could, Admiral Hamilton agreed, but that is not why we returned to Earth. Hitting their supply lines and rescuing human prisoners would only delay their ultimate plan rather than stopping it completely. She led them to a massive cargo bay that contained hundreds of stasis chambers arranged in perfect rows. Inside each chamber was a figure from one of dozens of different alien species, all preserved in the same crystalline suspension that had kept Admiral Hamilton alive for 60 years. Commander Morrison stared at the chambers in amazement while trying to count the total number of occupants. Admiral, how many coalition representatives did you bring back with you? 3,000 of the galaxy's best military advisors, engineers, scientists, and warriors from every species in the coalition, Admiral Hamilton replied with obvious pride. They volunteered to leave their homes and families to help humanity not just reclaim Earth, but take our place as equals in the galactic community. Dr. Park ran her medical scanners over several chambers and reported that all occupants were in perfect health and ready to be awakened when needed. The diversity of species was incredible, ranging from silicon-based life forms that looked like living crystals to energy beings that existed as patterns of pure thought within specially designed containment. Systems Ryan Blake studied the technical specifications for each species' unique abilities and knowledge. Admiral, the scientific advances we could achieve by working with these allies would advance human civilization by centuries in just a few years. That is exactly what the coalition hopes to accomplish, Admiral Hamilton confirmed. But more importantly, they have brought with them detailed intelligence about 17 other human colonies that the hegemony has conquered since Earth fell. We are not here just to save one world, but to liberate all of humanity. Lieutenant Collins accessed the tactical information about human colonies under hegemony control and studied population estimates and defensive installations. Admiral, some of these colonies have been under occupation for over a decade. The hegemony forces will be well established and heavily defended, which is why we will not be fighting them alone. Admiral Hamilton replied as she activated displays showing coalition fleet movements throughout the galaxy. Our allies have been preparing for this campaign for months, positioning ships and resources to support liberation efforts across multiple star systems simultaneously. The strategy was more complex than any military operation humans had ever attempted. Rather than focusing on individual targets, the plan called for coordinated strikes against hegemony, supply lines, communication networks, and command structures across dozens of star systems. The goal was not just to free human colonies, but to cripple hegemony expansion efforts throughout the entire region. Commander Morrison studied the overall tactical situation and realized the scope of what Admiral Hamilton was proposing. Admiral, this is not just a rescue mission or even a war of liberation. You are talking about completely restructuring the balance of power in this part of the galaxy. Exactly, Admiral Hamilton confirmed with a fierce smile. The hegemony has ruled through fear and overwhelming force for thousands of years because no one has ever been able to effectively coordinate resistance across multiple species and star systems. They expect their victims to fight alone and be defeated individually. Tony Rodriguez examined the logistical requirements for supporting such a massive campaign and whistled softly at the complexity involved. Admiral, the resource requirements for coordinating attacks across 17 star systems would be enormous. How do we supply and support forces operating across such vast distances? The Coalition has been stockpiling supplies and equipment for this operation for over 5 years. Admiral Hamilton explained while showing them hidden supply depots and staging areas throughout the region. More importantly, they have developed new communication technologies that allow real-time coordination across interstellar distances. Amy Collins studied the communication systems and realized their implications went far beyond military applications. Admiral, this technology could revolutionize trade exploration and diplomacy throughout the galaxy. Species separated by hundreds of light years could work together as if they were in the same star system. That is the ultimate goal of the Coalition, Admiral Hamilton confirmed. To create a truly galactic civilization where distance and species differences no longer prevent cooperation and mutual advancement. But first they had to defeat an enemy that had dominated the galaxy for millennia and prevent them from obtaining a weapon that could destroy entire universes. The real war was about to begin. 6 months after the defiant return, Admiral Hamilton stood on the bridge watching as the largest fleet in galactic history prepared for the assault on Earth. The Coalition had spent those months awakening their representatives and establishing coordination with human resistance groups throughout occupied territory. What had started as a desperate refugee population scattered across distant colonies had become the core of a liberation army that would reshape the galaxy. Captain Ben Parker commanded the rebuilt Earth Defense Fleet from his flagship UES Liberty and studied the tactical displays showing hegemony defensive positions throughout the Sol system. The alien occupiers had spent 15 years turning Earth orbital installations into fortified strongholds that seemed impossible to assault directly. Their confidence in human defeat had made them careless, but their defensive capabilities were still formidable. All ships, this is defiant. Actual Admiral Hamilton voice rang across fleet communications, reaching hundreds of vessels from dozens of different species. 62 years ago, humanity was forced to flee our home world as refugees. Today, we return not as desperate survivors, but as liberators, backed by the greatest alliance in galactic history. The Coalition fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships flying alongside vessels from 60 different alien civilizations created a visual display that represented hope for oppressed species throughout the universe. Ancient enemies had put aside centuries of conflict to unite against the hegemony threat, while newcomers like humanity brought fresh tactics to the eternal struggle. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Miller prepared to lead ground assault forces against hegemony installations on Earth's surface. His troops included human resistance fighters who had spent years hiding in underground tunnels alongside alien commandos whose species had been fighting the hegemony for centuries. The combination of local knowledge with advanced Coalition technology gave them advantages that the occupying forces could never expect. Phoenix Base, this is Ground Team Alpha Miller reported as his forces took positions around major hegemony strongholds. Civilian evacuation is complete and resistance cells are in position. You are authorized to begin orbital bombardment of military targets only. Above Earth, the defiant weapons spoke for the first time since returning from the distant reach. The Eye. Main cannons fired projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions, simultaneously making them impossible to intercept or deflect. Hegemony dreadnoughts that had controlled Earth skies for 15 years simply vanished under the assault of technology they had never encountered before. Dr. Lisa Park coordinated medical support for liberation forces while monitoring civilian rescue operations across the planet. Admiral, we are receiving emergency signals from human settlements on every continent. People are coming out of hiding places they have used for years. They know Earth is being liberated. The hegemony response was swift but chaotic. Their fleet commanders had grown comfortable during their long occupation and were not prepared for the coordinated assault of advanced alien technology combined with human tactical unpredictability. Coalition forces struck supply depots, communication centers, and command posts simultaneously, while human resistance fighters sabotaged ground. Installations from within Chief Science Officer Ryan Blake monitored hegemony communications and reported growing panic among their forces. Admiral, their commanders are requesting immediate reinforcements from occupation fleets in other star systems. They do not understand how humans acquired such advanced technology and alien allies. That confusion is exactly what we were counting on, Admiral Hamilton replied as she watched coalition forces systematically dismantle hegemony defenses. They have ruled through fear and overwhelming force for so long that they cannot adapt to facing organized resistance with superior technology. Lieutenant Amy Collins coordinated with Coalition intelligence services to track hegemony fleet movements throughout the region. Admiral long-range sensors show enemy reinforcements moving toward Earth from occupied colonies in 3 nearby star systems. They are pulling garrison fleets from multiple worlds to respond to our attack. Admiral Hamilton smiled grimly as she activated displays showing Coalition fleet positions throughout the galaxy. Let them come. While they concentrate forces here, our allies are liberating the colonies they just weakened by removing their defensive fleets. The strategy was working perfectly. Hegemony commanders faced an impossible choice between defending Earth or protecting their other conquered territories. Their decision to reinforce Earth meant that coalition liberation forces could strike at poorly defended colonies throughout the region, while the main enemy fleet was concentrated in one location. Tony Rodriguez monitored the quantum drive systems as coalition reinforcements arrived through folded space from staging areas across the galaxy. Admiral, we now have over 800 ships in the Sol system, with more arriving every hour. The hegemony fleet is outnumbered 3-1, and our technology gives us additional tactical advantages. But the most important victory was happening on Earth's surface, where human civilians emerged from years of hiding to witness their planet liberation. Bobby Chen led ground forces through abandoned cities where hegemony occupation troops surrendered rather than face the combined assault of human and alien forces working together. Dr. Park established field hospitals in major population centers and began treating humans who had suffered under alien occupation for 15 years. The medical technology provided by coalition allies could heal injuries and diseases that human medicine alone could never address. Families separated for years were reunited, while communities that had been destroyed began the process of rebuilding. Within 72 hours, Earth was completely free of hegemony occupation forces. The speed of the victory surprised even Admiral Hamilton, who had planned the campaign. Enemy fleets that should have fought to the death instead retreated when faced with weapons and tactics they could not. Counter-Commander Morrison joined Admiral Hamilton on the Defiant Bridge as they watched. Hegemony survivors fleeing the Sol system in whatever ships remained operational. Admiral, this victory exceeded our most optimistic projections. Earth is free, and the enemy has suffered their worst defeat in centuries. This is only the beginning, Admiral Hamilton replied as she studied reports of successful liberation efforts at 17 other human colonies. The real victory will come when we prevent the hegemony from finding the ancient artifact buried somewhere in our solar system coalition. Science teams were already beginning deep space scans of the outer planets and asteroid fields, searching for energy signatures that might indicate the location of technology left behind by an ancient civilization. Finding and securing that artifact before the hegemony could return with a larger fleet had become their highest priority. Amy Collins reported successful establishment of communication links with liberated human colonies throughout the region. Admiral, all 17 targeted worlds have been freed and their populations are safe. Coalition losses were minimal while hegemony forces suffered catastrophic defeats. The liberation of humanity had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, but Admiral Hamilton knew their greatest challenges still lay ahead. The hegemony would not accept these defeats and would return with overwhelming force unless the coalition could find and neutralize the ancient weapon that made Earth so important to their ultimate plans. 1 year after Earth liberation, Admiral Kate Hamilton stood in the newly constructed council chambers orbiting above her home planet and looked out at representatives from 87 different species. The chamber itself was a marvel of combined human and alien engineering floating in space as a symbol of the new galactic civilization that had emerged from the ashes of hegemony. Defeat Humanity had not only reclaimed its place among the stars, but had fundamentally changed the balance of power throughout the galaxy. The rapid liberation of human colonies had inspired resistance movements on hundreds of worlds, leading to the largest rebellion against hegemony rule in their 1,000-year history, Ambassador Claire Foster, who had been elected as Humanity representative. To the Galactic Council activated holographic displays showing the current political situation across known space. The hegemony expansion has been completely halted for the first time in recorded history. Their outer territories are in full revolt, inspired by our demonstration that the hegemony can be defeated through coordinated resistance. Admiral Morrison, now promoted to overall command of the combined fleet, studied tactical reports from across the galaxy. The enemy had lost control of over 300 star systems in the past year as species after species joined the growing coalition. More importantly, hegemony supply lines and communication networks had been so badly damaged that their remaining territories were increasingly isolated from central command. 17 human worlds have been not only liberated but transformed into major coalition strongholds, Morrison reported with obvious satisfaction. Our hybrid technologies are being shared freely among all member species, resulting in advances that benefit everyone in the alliance. The technological revolution had exceeded even the most optimistic projections. Human innovation, combined with alien science, had produced breakthroughs in medicine, engineering, and communication that were advancing every coalition species by centuries. More importantly, the spirit of cooperation and shared knowledge had created a galactic community unlike anything in recorded history. Dr. Ryan Blake, now heading the Institute for Interspecies Technology, looked up from research reports that detailed some of the most exciting discoveries. Admiral, the coalition science teams have made remarkable progress in understanding the ancient artifact we found buried in the asteroid belt. The technology appears to be a key component for manipulating space and time on a universal scale. The artifact discovery had been the key to preventing hegemony victory. Coalition archaeologists and human researchers working together had located the ancient device before enemy forces could return in strength. More importantly, they had learned enough about its function to ensure it could never be used for the destructive purposes the hegemony had planned. The device was created by a civilization that existed millions of years before current galactic species evolved, Dr. Park added from her research station. They apparently built it as a safeguard against universe-ending threats, but the hegemony intended to reverse its function and use it as a weapon of mass destruction. Admiral Hamilton activated displays showing the artifact's current secure location in a heavily defended research facility. The ancient builders had clearly intended for it to be found by a truly cooperative civilization rather than a conquering empire. The activation process requires voluntary participation from representatives of at least 50 different species working together. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Miller, who now commanded coalition ground forces throughout the liberated territories, reported on the continuing integration of human and alien military units. Our combined forces have proven so effective that hegemony commanders are abandoning entire sectors rather than face us in direct combat. Enemy morale has collapsed across their remaining territories. But the most significant change was happening within human civilization itself. Captain Amy Collins, now commanding her own exploration vessel, prepared to lead the first human expedition beyond the galaxy edge. Admiral, our scout ships have completed preliminary mapping of the void between galaxies. We have identified what appear to be artificial structures that suggest other galactic civilizations exist. The implications were staggering. If other galaxies contained intelligent life, then the possibilities for exploration, trade, and cultural exchange were unlimited. More importantly, it meant that the hegemony threat was confined to their local region rather than representing a universal danger. Admiral Hamilton looked around the council chamber at the faces of humans and aliens who had come together to reshape their corner of the universe. The transformation had been so complete that it was difficult to remember how desperate humanity's situation had been just 1 year earlier. Captain Ben Parker, now commanding the Sol Defense Fleet, reported successful completion of the first interstellar trade agreements between human colonies and alien civilizations. Admiral, our agricultural products and entertainment media are in high demand throughout Coalition space, while alien technology continues to advance our capabilities in every field. The cultural exchange had been as important as the military alliance. Human music, art, and literature had become popular throughout the galaxy, while alien philosophy, science, and history had enriched human understanding of the universe. The integration had created something entirely new that was greater than the sum of its parts. Tony Rodriguez reported from the expanded shipyards orbiting Earth, where human and alien workers constructed vessels using the best technology from every coalition species. Admiral, the new ship designs incorporate innovations from over 30 different civilizations. Our exploration and defense capabilities now exceed anything the galaxy has ever seen. Dr. Lisa Park coordinated medical exchange programs that had eliminated diseases throughout Coalition space while extending lifespans for every member species. The combination of human medical techniques with alien healing technology had created healthcare capabilities that seemed miraculous by earlier standards. But perhaps the most important development was the change in how galactic civilization approached conflict and cooperation. Lieutenant Bobby Chen, who commanded the new Diplomatic Protection Service, reported that over 24 former enemy species had requested membership in the coalition after witnessing the benefits of cooperative civilization. The hegemony model of conquest and domination was being replaced by voluntary association and mutual benefit. Species that had been enemies for centuries were working together, while newcomers brought fresh perspectives that advanced everyone's understanding of science, technology, and philosophy. Admiral Hamilton activated the final display showing Coalition exploration fleets preparing to venture beyond their home galaxy for the first time in history. The ships carried representatives from every member species, along with copies of the ancient artifact technology that could protect them from universe level threats. Admiral Collins reported from her flagship as the exploration fleet prepared to depart. We are ready to begin mapping the void between galaxies and making contact with whatever civilizations we might find. The question now is not whether we can defeat the hegemony, but what we do with the galaxy once we have completely removed their influence. Admiral Hamilton smiled as she looked out at the stars beyond Earth atmosphere, knowing that humanity had not only survived its greatest trial, but had emerged as leaders in creating something unprecedented in galactic history. The age of cooperation had begun, and the universe itself seemed full of unlimited possibilities. Captain Amy Collins activated her ship quantum drive and led the first intergalactic exploration fleet into the void between galaxies, carrying with them the hopes and dreams of every species that had chosen cooperation over conquest. Whatever they found waiting in the darkness would face not a single species, but an entire galactic civilization united in its commitment to exploration, discovery, and peaceful progress.